layer here, I have a bunch of these cute little pictures here. And I've got a person, and we'll be putting a person and a little dog in later on. But what I want to do right now is I want to put a scene back here so that this goes into my living room, right? And rather than just show this, you know, a white or black or some colored space, I actually want to plop the scene into in there. So I have a couple scenes here. I've got showing up on my other screen. I've got this, and I've got this one. And actually, I think this is the one that I'm going to use today. So if you are looking for a scene on the internet, or taking a picture of a scene in your home or something like that, what you generally want to do is try to get a you know, quote unquote, 1-point perspective of the scene, right? So that the back wall is flat and rectangular and not on an angle. That way, it'll appear, if I have, you know, a scene here where the back corner is back here and everything goes to the side, it's going to look like this room is sort of on an angle, right? It's not in the walls aren't running perpendicular to each other back in this back room. So so I'm gonna use this scene here, and I have it all saved to my hard drive or my jump drive, and I'm trying to keep things as organized as I possibly can here. And before I do, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get to the top of my layer stack, or almost to the top. I just have some more line work here. It's just a repeat of the same line work before. And I just brought this up to the top just to sort of crisp things up so that I can see these lines a little clearer. So I'm just going to go to the top of my, or almost to the top of my layer stack here. And I have these just in Explorer here, you know, File Explorer here. And so I'm going to take my Great Room here, and I'm just going to drag it into my rendering here. And there it is. You can see the line work going through it because it is underneath that kitchen elevation line work. So let me just hit enter. You'll see the blue square, the blue X running through it. That's telling me that I'm in the transform tool, and I'm just going to get out of it, and I am going to put it at the top of my layer stack because I want it to be clear, at least for now. All right, so I'm going to move this down. Oh, I guess I should be in the move tool here. So I want to move this kind of into place about where I think it should go. And I can use the transform tool, Control T for transform, and that allows me to change the size of the image here. And if yours is not maintaining the aspect ratio, then you need to hold Shift. Yours may be doing this. But I think in the newer versions, this is the default is to keep the aspect ratio correct. So you just want to kind of move this up and down until it's about right. We're gonna modify this later in any case. So I'm just sort of getting it in more or less in the right spot. I'm just going to hit enter here. Now in the handout, I didn't actually write that handout, and there are 100 different ways to skin a cat, and they in the handout they are suggesting to use a pattern overlay or pattern pattern overlay, but I think that this works better, and I just think it's more industry correct to use a mask, a layer mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I have my Great Room layer here, and I'm just going to temporarily turn it off so I can select the area that I want to show through the mask. Remember, a layer mask hides everything on that layer except for what you tell it to not hide. So I am going to use my magic wand and tell it not to hide this this window, this doorway opening here. And then I'm just going to create the mask. I'll just come down here, and to the left of my black and white cookie and to the right of my special effects, my FX button, is the mask, layer mask tool here, and I'll just click on it. And there I have my black layer mask with the little white cutout in the mask, which is this cutout here that we identified. And if I turn my layer back on, there is my image in the space. Now, I don't actually think that is in the proper location. The scale, I think, is a little bit off as well. So I want to adjust that. Now, if I go over to my move tool here and I start moving this image, you see what's happening. It's moving, but the mask is still clipping the area. Let me undo that, Control Z to undo. So what I want to do is I want to keep the mask location, but I want to move the image within the mask. And I can do that by over on the layer here. You'll see there is a little lock right here, or a little chain here that chains these two together. This is the mask and this is the image. So what I'm going to do is unchain it. I'm just going to click on it to unchain that. So now I can move the image independently of the layer mask. So I have my image highlighted, right? This is the layer mask highlighted. I don't want that. I want to move the image. So I am highlighting the image here. And now I can move this around. I can go back into my transform tool, Control T for transform, and I'm going to increase the size. So how do I know how big this should be? Well, I'm kind of using the countertop, as a guide, and I'm looking at at that table there. Now I know that this is receding, but they should kind of be in the neighborhood, I think, a little bit. I think that's probably okay there. So where this belongs, maybe I want to see the fireplace there. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit bigger. No, I think that's about right. So this is a matter of you kind of using your eyeballs here and just figuring out what appears to be the best. And then I'm just going to hit enter. And now I have this image placed relatively perspective-wise correctly and positioned in a location that I kind of like. So now, just to be on the safe side, I like to relock or rechain the mask and the image back together. And I just click there right between them, and that little chain comes back and they are now locked together. Now, I don't want this room to be the focus of my attention, right? I want my kitchen to be the focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the opacity back of this. And I think, well, that's a little much, isn't it? And that helps, but I think I can do even better. What I'm going to try is I'm going to go to my black and white cookie here. And I'm going to do a brightness and contrast here. And let's see what happens. Now, right now, this popped up here, and this is my brightness and contrast. And let's just I'm going to bring down my brightness a little bit. And as I'm bringing down my brightness, you'll notice that it is affecting all of the layers below it, all of them. Well, I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is only affect that great room layer. So what I'm doing, I'm holding my Alt key, and I'm clicking on that little band right in between the two layers. And now what I've done is I've linked this brightness and contrast control here to this great room layer only. And you'll see that the rest of the room kind of brightened up. Now I can go back to, so this is a mask here, And then this is my brightness and contrast controls. So I can double click on that and I can further change the brightness and contrast, and it's only affecting the room. So what I'm trying to do is dull the room down a little bit so that, this is the centerpiece of our rendering, and this is just kind of, they're in the background where it belongs. Now, one other thing that I'm looking at here is I put some shadow. I think this is an inner shadow on the wall back here, and I'm seeing some inner shadow coming through over here, which is making this kind of like pop out, which is not what I want. So I'm going to go down to let me pull this up so I see more of my layers. I'm going to go to my walls, yeah, and on my walls layer here, I have inner shadow, so I'm going to double click on that. And there is my inner shadow stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this angle. First, I'll uncheck use global light here. And what this does is this allows me to make this layer, the shadows on this layer, different than other layers. So I'm going to change this angle. Right there, even that helped. So what I don't want to see is like shadow that's happening over here. And I think what I'm going to do is just make it a little less, just a little less pronounced, I think.
So Paul, if you had that global light checked, it would make the same changes to all of the
No,
shadows?
no. What it will do is it will have the same angle. So
Okay.
like my shadow down here would be on an angle, and the shadows that I have around here would be on an angle. So I don't want to do that. I want this to sort of be different than the rest of them. So that's
Okay.
why I have that unchecked. So I'm just kind of, this is just a finessing and playing thing here. I think that works a little better. This just is a little less popping out into the room. Now, if I were doing this, what I would do is I'd rethink this design at this point, if it were me. I would say, to me, it's bothersome that this door jamb is right butted up against, this millwork here for the refrigerator enclosure here. And what I would do is I would have moved this over so that I would have had an equal amount of wall on this side and on this side, so that this was centered. I think that would just look better. But this is what it is, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to leave it as it is. But and this is one of the lovely things about doing renderings or doing sketching, or making things three-dimensional, so you're looking at elevations, etc. Because when you're looking at the plan, sometimes you don't anticipate things being the way that they actually are. Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's move on. I'm going to do some flooring now. And let me go back to my images here. And I've got some wood floors, and these are all up on Blackboard if you want to download them. But of course, you're free to download, anything that you'd like. And I have a bunch of woods here, and maybe, well, that's kind of, maybe I'll just do the start point here. So I've got, let me just double click on it. I've got a wood texture right here. Now, because the wood the pattern is running horizontally, I don't think that I need to do a lot to that pattern. I can just sort of stretch it, and I'm gonna show some pattern down here for the floor, and if those planks, those wood planks, get longer, I think it would be fine. But if I had a texture like this, where it's running across this way, as I stretch that pattern across my floor, those planks, each of those planks, are going to get wider and wider and wider and wider. So if that were the case, then what I would want to do is I would want to pull this up in Photoshop, widen my image, and then copy this, 3, 4 times, and then take that long widened image, which will have a lot more planks, and use that. But for the sake of simplicity and ease, I'm going to use this horizontal here. So all I'm going to do is, again, just from this is my Windows Explorer here, just grabbing it and pulling it into my image. And there it is. So why is stuff in front of it? Why is stuff behind it? Because look where it came in on my layer stack, right? It did that. I'm just going to hit enter to get out of the transform tool here. It did that because I was fiddling around with my walls layer, and so that was my active layer, and it put the new layer in right above whatever layer is active. So I'm gonna drag this up to the top of my layer stack. There we go. And I'm just gonna pull back a little bit, and I'm gonna go into the transform tool. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to squish it down. Now I'm holding my my shift key here. Let me just undo that. So if I, on my computer right now, if I just grab this grip here and I just start pulling down, what it's doing is it's changing the size of it proportionally, right? Which is nice in normal circumstances. But for this, I'm actually going to squish it down. So I'm holding down my shift key, and then I'm squishing it down, and I'm going to move this over, and that nicely is snapping to where I want it. Maybe I'll squish this up a little bit, and I'm going to hold my shift key, and I'm going to extend it out so that this corner aligns with this corner of the room, and this corner of the floor aligns with this edge of the room here. Okay, lovely. Now I'm going to kind of pull this into 3 dimensions. And this time what I'm going to do is hold my control key. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to draw a guideline. I'm going to put a guideline down. So guidelines, if you have your rulers visible on your screen, you can just go up to the ruler and you can draw, not draw, but put a guideline in. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I want my, pretty much there. That's kind of my guide to where I'm going to want the front edge of my floor. And in the end, we'll crop this, so it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to use it, but I will. So if I grab this left grip here, and I move it. Oops, let me undo that. I move it and I hold control. This time I'm holding control. I now am warping this image here. And I'm going to kind of bring it up to that guideline there. And then let me move back a little bit. And then I'm going to hit control over here, and I'm going to warp this image on this side to something that looks, kind of 3-dimensional, I think. And I'll just hit my enter key to get out of the transform tool. And there, I kind of have a floor that, starts to look a little 3-dimensional. I mean, this is a little funky here because we know that this cabinet actually extends out, right? And this would extend out a little bit. But I think, it's telling the story, right? I'm able to show some wood flooring on here so that my client has an idea of what the materials are that are going to be on the floor. So I'm liking that. And by the way, well, no, I guess you can keep the same kitchen file. I was going to say to rename this file, but I'm not sure you need to do that.
Question. What is the thing called where you like drag the line down from? Because it's not
So
showing
that
up.
so that if you have your rulers visible, you can you can just left click on the ruler and drag down, and you can put in these guidelines. And you can also do them vertically. And we'll talk about them more next week when we're arranging materials on our finish board, so that materials all line up.
I
And then
uh I don't see that. So I was like, I try to open it from Windows, but I still don't see the option to open them.
to open what?
To like have the rulers show.
Oh, you don't see the rulers. Oh, if you go
Yeah.
to view here, about 2/3 of the way down, there's rulers here. And you can just click on that and you'll see rulers. Someone enlightened me on that last week or the week before.
Thank you.
So, and then when you're done with your guidelines and you don't want to see them anymore, again, you can just go to view and clear guides. And those puppies are gone. You don't need to use them anymore. All right, so that's lovely. Let's move to the next thing here. Go back to my stuff here. And I think I have, where are those other images? So, okay, so I have a person here. Now, this person is in a ping file. And I'm going to open this in Photoshop. There it is. So this person is a ping file, and it has, you'll notice it has a clear background, right? A transparent background. And I know that it's a transparent background because of the gray and white checkerboard. That is Photoshop telling me that there is nothing behind her, so that if I drag her into my image, everything will fill the image around her. If you find an image that is white behind it, what you'll have to do, or some other background on it, you'll need to get rid of that background. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the mixer and the coffee maker. So, but I just wanted you to know that this image is a PNG file, a PNG file. So when I drag her into my render, there she is. You'll see that, she fits in the scene, and there's no border around her. And while I'm at it, I think I'm going to insert that little dog too. Oops. Yeah. So it's not allowing me to insert the dog. Why not? Well, because if you notice, the woman is highlighted with that X through it. So I am in the middle of the transform command. So if I just, oops. Let me bring her back in. I'm going too fast here. So I'm just going to bring her in, and now I will just hit enter after I bring her in. And now I can move her around in my wherever I want. And we'll put her where she needs to be in a minute. So let me go back while I'm here and just bring in her little dog too. Just move the dog over. All right. So I've got my woman and my dog in, and you'll notice that I have 2 layers that Photoshop's created for me, woman 2 and dog 4. So that's just the name of these files. And this just happened to be called woman 2. Let me get rid of these guidelines because they're bothering me a little bit. Okay. So where does she go, and how big does she get? So is she up here? Is she down here? Is this the right size? How do we set where she goes? What's correct? Well, what's important is where her eyes are. And this is because this is ultimately, this is like a 1-point perspective, right? And it is, and really it's an elevation. It's really just a developed elevation. So where are her eyes? So what are our clues? Well, we've got the wall cabinets here, right? So if I were to pull maybe, I don't know, I would have to go down and measure my wall cabinets because I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that my eyes are taller than my wall cabinets here. So I'm going to assume that that guideline that I just drew is about where her eyes go. So to locate a person, you want to put them right on where the eyes go, and wherever her feet fall, that's where her feet fall. She literally hangs by her eyes. So if I go with the transform tool and I want to pull her into the foreground, what I'm doing is I'm leaving her I'm leaving her eyes, and I'm just moving her, in. And sometimes you see, like an image where the person is way in the foreground or something, and she would be cut off here, and that would be perfectly fine if you wanted to do that, or I can reduce the size of her so that she's in the room, or if she's in the now. Okay, so if this were pure elevation, I would say that's correct. But this elevation, this area back here is in perspective in actuality, right? So by the time she gets back here, maybe her eye level's down here, so she might actually be this big when she's back there. But I want to keep her in the room, so I'm going to put her here more or less, and I'm going to drag her so her feet land into inside the room. Okay. So the dog, oops, let me go on to my dog
So
layer.
was only the lower half of her body moving because you had her eyes on the guide?
No, it wasn't. It was just kind of coincidental that happened. But well, I get, yes, generally if I'm adjusting the dog here, if I'm pulling the grips at the bottom, the area on the top will stay the same. So
Okay.
yeah. So for this guy, I'm gonna make, I don't know how big this dude should be. I'm gonna say like that. Okay. Now, obviously, he wouldn't be up here, right? Because we're thinking about adults here, adult height, and if there were kids, of course, they would be lower too, because their eye height is lower, right? So if they're 3 feet high and the countertop is about 3 feet high, they would land more or less, here. All right. So I have my two little figures here, and I'm going to add a shadow to them just to sort of give them to give them a little bit of gravitas, so that they're kind of grounded down on the ground. Now, there's a lot of ways of doing shadows, and in the VizTech class, what I like to do is I like to do a gradient circle. I do the gradient, and then I squeeze the gradient down and I put it underneath the person, and it works really nicely. But I want to show you a completely different way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of each of these layers, the woman and the dog. So I'm going to, first I'll do the woman. I'm going to right click, and then I will duplicate the layer and make sure this is something that happens to, I do this so much, I accidentally click delete layer because it's right below duplicate. So make sure you got duplicate layer. And then it's saying woman 2, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it woman 2 shadow. And I'll do the same for the dog. So I'll just right click, duplicate layer, dog 4 shadow. Okay. Now, I am going to let's start with the woman. I'm going to I want to change that the woman shadow layer so that it's all black. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the transform tool to squish it down on the ground so that it, it appears over here. And then I'm going to do the same for the dog. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to image. I'm on the woman 2 shadow layer here. I'm going to go to image, adjustments, and exposure. And now if I'm going to play with this exposure slider. If I slide it to the left, it's filling her in black. If I slide it to the right, it's filling her in white. But in this instance, I want to slide it all the way to the black. And then what we'll do is we'll adjust the opacity of the woman 2 shadow layer later on, so that it doesn't look so odd here. So I'm going to hit OK. And now on my woman 2 shadow layer, and now I'm going to go into the transform tool. Now for what this is telling me is, so what it's done over here on the right is it's created a smart filter, and that filter is the exposure. So when I'm using the transform tool, it's saying that it is temporarily turning off the filter while I'm working in the transform tool. And that's fine as long as I know what's going on. So this is just a little warning that Photoshop is giving me. I'm going to hit OK, and you'll see that the black filter has temporarily been turned off. So I am going to squeeze her down and put her down like this. Now I'm holding my shift key while I'm doing that. And let's zoom in here so you can get a better look. And I'm also going to use my control key. So I'm going to say, let me go back here. So I'm thinking about light, and actually light is kind of hitting around the right side. So, maybe there's room light, so it's coming down. The light's coming down this way, so it's going to hit the ground. Her shadow is going to be more or less here. Okay. So right now that shadow's plopped right in front of her. So I'm going to use my control key here to really warp this thing. I'm going to pull it off to the left. And I'm going to move it up. Let's see how this looks. So, well, the first thing that you notice is that the shadow is on top of her feet here. So we don't want that. And that's easily fixed by just taking the woman 2 layer and dragging it so it is on top of the shadow in my layer stack here. And that looks a lot better. So let me go back to my transform to, I'm transforming the woman here. Let me go back to the shadow layer here and hit Control T to transform. And I'm just gonna, again, I'm holding my control key and I'm just kind of moving this so it kind of looks great. You'll be your own worst critic. Your client will go, oh, look at that cool shadow. It looks great. And you're like working on it for half an hour trying to make it look fantastic. So, all right. So there I have my my shadow, and I guess it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna pull that opacity way down. There. I think that's really what I should do is I should look at it like this, because that's the way the client's going to look at it. So now I'll play with my opacity. And, I don't want it too crazy, but actually my opacity just coincidentally happens to be 50 with this floor that I'm using and blah, blah, blah. So that looks okay. All right. So now let's do the same thing with our puppy here. So I'm going to go over to my dog shadow layer here. And I'm going to go over to image, adjustments, and exposure. And I'm going to pull the exposure down all the way to 0 or to negative, to as far left, I guess it's -20, all the way to the left. I'll just hit OK. Now let's zoom into him. And I'm going to let this shadow be my guide for what I do with this guy. So I'm going to hit Control T for transform. It's giving me that little message there. And I'm going to squish him down. And kind of move him into place. So I'm moving him. I'm kind of like looking at this paw here, and I'm putting that paw kind of where it would belong, more or less. I'm holding Control to warp this guy. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so he's on top of the shadow's on top of the dog. So let me pull the dog to the top of the layer stack there. Yeah. Oops. I'm transforming the dog, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to transform the dog shadow. Control T to transform. And I don't know. Let's pull this back. Oops. Wait, I don't want to do that. I'm going to hold my Shift key here. Maybe I want to rotate it a little bit. I'm trying to get like his paw, his back here, and this paw to sort of align. And now use Control here to pull that down. God, I'm getting text messages today like crazy. Today's my birthday. So everyone is giving me text.
Happy birthday, Paul.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'm spending it with you all.
You know what's
You're so
funny? My birthday's
special.
on the 28th too, and it's October though. But my grandma, she wished me today. And it's funny, I was like, it's next month. And she's like, if I forget it next month, don't blame me.
All right. So now I've got my little puppy here, and he's got a shadow. My scale figure character or person here, and she has a shadow. And so if I don't like where I place them, I can move them, but remember that I'm going to move the dog here. Remember that you need to move the dog with the shadow. So I need to select both layers. So I'm holding the dog and I'm holding the dog shadow here, or I'm holding Shift and I'm clicking on the dog and the dog shadow. And then with my move tool up here, I can kind of move him. I think I just like him over on this side because he's kind of facing her, and it's blocking that, which I'm not sure is the greatest. I actually like that a little better. All right. You know what? One more thing I want to mention to y'all, and that is when you are selecting a scale figure for your renders. Now this scale figure, I didn't pick this person, so this was in the entourage that sort of came with this project here. But when I am selecting a scale figure, I try to get a figure that is not looking directly at me. You know, I would prefer that she's looking off to the right or to the left a little bit, or maybe we're seeing her in profile or something, so that she's not looking directly at you. Or maybe if she was looking down at the dog, that would be cute too. And the reason is this, this has to do with just human psychology. When we see an image with a face in it, and that face is looking at us, we automatically zoom in and focus on that image first. It is the first thing that we look at when we're presented with an image. So when my client is looking at this, I know, I can bet my bottom dollar that the first thing he or she will look at is this image. And they won't dwell on it, but they'll look at it, and then they'll look at the rest of the rendering. And the reason is because of the position of this person's eyes. They're looking right at us. So it's fine to use this for your rendering. It's totally fine to use this, but just sort of keep that as you move on. Just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That images are always better when they're not looking directly at you. All right. So this is looking pretty sharp. I'm liking this. Let me get rid of that guideline. All right. So the next thing is I'm going to plop down a few appliances here. And I personally think that discretion is the way to go here. You know, I don't think I would want, you know, this all lined up with appliances, etc. So let me go. And I'm not sure, you know, I guess maybe this kind of looks a little sterile with nothing there. So I guess it is, you know, a little kind of nice to have some kind of accessories of some sort on there. So let's see what we got here.
Paul, can you also show us, because the cabinet next to the refrigerator, I have in glass, the door are glass. So I have something I want to put on the shelves, how I can do the glass, change the door.
Well, put whatever the objects are on the shelf, and then do a layer with glass over it.
Okay.
Do a new layer. So you'll have, so this thing, I think those inner panels, I think I put them on their own layer, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, could you also just do a layer mask if you have an image of items on a shelf?
Sure. Oh yeah, certainly. That's really, yeah, that definitely. So let's see, I've got upper cabinet panels. So okay, so if I had, you know, let's say my line work had some shelving here, right? And I want to put some doodads or dishes or whatever on that. I'd put it here. I'd want to think about the background, obviously. And then what I would do is I would create a new layer that covers this whole rectangle here, put a color on it, like a white, probably, or an off-white maybe. And then I would do a filter. So let me turn that back on. If I can find it. Here it is. So let's just say that, you know, I have my little entourage behind this panel here. And so I would bring down the transparency of it, right, to 50% or whatever. I don't have anything behind it, so bringing down the transparency isn't going to help. And that may do it right there. You know, just having that sort of filmy, whitish, transparent, that may do it right there. But you may also want to add a filter, and you can go here to filter. And well, I guess I would have to convert for smart filters, and that's fine. I can do that. And no, I lost it. I think I actually converted the dog for smart filters. There it is, upper cabinet panel. Okay, so I'll go to filter. Oh yeah, I'm gonna undo that, convert to smart filter here. Okay, so let me go back to my panel. Upper cabinet panels right here. And what am I doing? Go to filter. And then I'm just going to go to, I'm not sure which one it is. So I'm going to go to filter gallery here. Oh, okay. I got to convert to smart object. Fine. And then you need to adjust the view here. So there they are. And right here under distort, so you'll have a bunch of drop downs here, and mine just happens to be distort happens to be open. So I'll click on distort, and then you can click glass. And now again, mine isn't showing it because there's nothing behind it, and there's no but it'll give you a, you know, a bevelly, a sort of distorted look here. And it's just a matter of you playing with it in order to get it. And you could do it. I mean, it's not too difficult. All right. So what have I got here? So I have some stuff here. Now, you're free to use this stuff if you'd like, but if you want to pick your own entourage, what I would suggest you look for are things that are straight on views, like this espresso machine. You know, this is, I'm not looking at it in perspective, right? I'm looking at it head on, because let's remember that this is an elevation. So if I want, unless I want that espresso machine, you know, to be on an angle here in the corner, you know, then I would want some angled view. But try to look for stuff that is head on. And if you can find it in a PNG format, that means that it will most probably be transparent behind it. So if I take this and drag it into my rendering, there it is. And I can see, you know, I'm going to change the size of this so it's realistic here. I can see, you know, my subway tile all around it, and that came in just nice. But sometimes you can't find that PNG file with the no background on it. So let me open so here. Yeah, so I have a KitchenAid here, and it's a JPEG. So let's look at this. Oh, I don't want that one. That's ugly. Okay. Let's do this. Okay, this is what I want to pull in. So now this, I brought this in. If I just drag, if I drag that JPEG, that was a JPEG. If I drag this into my document here, you'll see the white background is there, right? And we don't want that. So what I'm doing is I'm opening it. There it is. I'm opening it up in my in Photoshop as a new document. And now the first thing I want to do is unlock it. So it comes in, and there's one layer here, background, and there's a little lock next to it. And what I do to unlock it is, I think you can right click and unlock it, but I just drag that lock into my trash, and it turns that into layer 0. So this is editable now. We can make changes to this layer. And what I want to do is just get rid of the background. So I'm just going to click on my magic wand tool here, and I'll just select my background there, and I'll just hit delete. Now I need to go through and get all of the background. And yours may have some imagery behind it, so yours might take a little more work to do, but I know that you can do it. It's just a matter of going around and carefully erasing, getting rid of the background. And as you erase it, which is what I did, I just hit delete, which erased that white background. You'll be left with the grand white checkerboard, which means transparency, right? So now, if I want to save this for future use, what I can do is go to File and then Save As. And right now it wants to save it as a Photoshop file. That's fine, but that's not what I really want. What I want is a PNG file. So let me see. Here it is down here. PNG file. And I'll just click Save. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So now I have I should have given it a unique name, but that's fine. That's fine. So let me go back here. And I'm not sure where I saved it to. So let's save it again. Save as kitchen accessories. I'm going to call this my copper KitchenAid. Oh, I'll save it as a ping file. Save. Okay. Now, because I'm looking in the wrong area here. Okay, so let me go. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at my documents. So I'm going to go down to my jump drive. Oops, CAD 1, this is CAD 2. Project 9. Accessories. There it is, my copper KitchenAid. All right, so let's go back to my rendering. And just drag this in. And there it is. It fits. It's nicely cut out so that I can see the background. And I'm just gonna, and I'm moving this actually with my arrows. If you want, you can move one pixel at a time, left and right and up and down by just using your arrows. So there I've got a KitchenAid and I have an espresso maker, and I'm going to call it a day. There's also some in here. Let me just there's some canisters here that you can pop in. And again, what I'm trying to do when on these canisters, they more or less have a flat bottom here. So they look like they're sitting on the counter. And they're, if this was more in perspective, they'd have round bottoms, and then they would look like they're rocking or something on my counter. I don't want to see that. I want nice flat bottoms. And I suppose what you could do is you could trim them if that isn't too apparent to your viewer. So let me just see here. So that KitchenAid, that does look a little wonky, doesn't it? Let me just, where is that KitchenAid layer? Oh, here it is. What would happen? Let me just select it, click on the move tool, and I'm just going to use my arrows here. And I'm just trying to get this onto the counter. I wonder what would happen if I took this. Where's my countertop? You know what I should do is I should start collapsing these effects here so that I can, oops. there's a little arrow next to each of these effects here. So you can collapse them to sort of save space as you're working here. So I'm looking for,
Can you
here's my,
tilt, can you tilt the perspective like you did with the floor? Like tilt it. It looks like it just needs to be tilted back a little.
maybe, let's give it a shot. So, all right, I'm on my granite countertop layer. Here it is. So, all right, let's try I have the transform tool here set, and I'm gonna hold my shift key and let's not as well as I would like. And you got to remember again, you know, like we fuss with this stuff, but your client isn't always going to notice. So what I was going to do was I was going to drag my the KitchenAid here down below my countertop. So my countertop's way down here. So let's take the KitchenAid and drop it right below the countertop. So there we go. That looks better. So what I'm doing is if I turn my countertop off here, you can see the KitchenAid is sort of extending down underneath the countertop, but who cares, right? Who's going to notice that?
Hey, Paul, can you show us how to do light again? If we have light rails under our cabinetry, should we be showing light?
For sure. Yes, that's yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so yeah, so I'm going to put in. I've got some track lighting or some tape lighting or something underneath here, and maybe I've got a couple lights under here. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I'm going to. So let me find. Doesn't matter what layer. I want to make sure that it's above my backsplash. So my backsplash is way back here, so that's fine. I'm just going to put it. I'm just going to put it above the backsplash. So I'm going to create a new layer. I created a group. Sorry. Create a new layer. Just a plain old layer, and I'm just going to call this under cabinet lighting. Okay. So I'm going to pick sort of an incandescent color that's going to go underneath here. So let me go over to my color picker here and go into my yellow oranges and just a light, just a you know, that you know, too much, right? I just kind of want to side on the side of light here. Maybe a little more color. We'll see. Okay. So I can do this with a gradient. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a paintbrush. So I've got my pencil tool here, and tucked underneath it is my brush tool. So I'm going to select my brush, and I want to make sure that I'm on my under cabinet lighting layer, and I want to go up here and work on my brushes. So I want this brush to be really soft and fluffy here. So I'm going to pick this brush, and I want to make sure that is way down. I want my hardness down to 0%. And then the size, that's too small. So let's just pull it up a little bit. Yeah. So, all right. I think that'll work. Oop. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this. Oh, somehow I'm on the clone stamp tool here. All right, let's try that again. I don't know how I did that. Hardness at 0, size about like that. Okay, So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna, oh, you know what? I'm gonna put this under cabinet lighting all the way up at the top. So, all right, I've already made a mess. But what I want is soft, fluffy lighting here. And so the most intense, let me make this really, really big. So the most intense part of this of this light is right in the center of my paintbrush, right? And then it gradates out. It's kind of like a gradient tool here. So let me undo that. And let me get rid of these. So let me just undo both of those and pull this back. I want this up at the top of my stack here. And it may not end up at the very top of my stack, but you know what? I'm just gonna use my eraser tool here. And just get rid of that. There. Okay. Go back to my brush tool and bring this down so that I'm thinking about, I'm gonna draw a line across underneath this cabinet here, so that the middle of the line, the middle of this circle is going to be right underneath the cabinet. So I want that gradient to be shining down and coming down from there. So so if I draw across here, you know, that's kind of what I want to see. But obviously, this is just shining everywhere on my under cabinet lighting layer. And I don't want that. I only want it to be on the backsplash, right? So I'm going to go down to my backsplash layer here. If I can find it, here it is. And then I am just going to select the backsplash layer, I just hold Control and select the layer mask. And as soon as I do that, it selects all of the backsplash area. So I don't need to worry too much about reselecting all of this area. That it just does it for me really, really quickly. So now Photoshop, when I have an area selected, Photoshop will only draw in that area. It won't draw anywhere else, which is exactly what we want. Let me zoom in, make life a little easier on myself. And then I'll just sort of start here. And I'm just going to hold my Shift key so I get a straight line. Too much. Well, maybe that'll work. And what the heck, while we're here, let's just do this one too. Oop.
Paul, do we have to have the lights? I know in our first rendering, we did the lights and everything, but I changed mine a lot, and I'm just curious, is that something?
You don't have to have your light. You don't have to. Again, it's your design. So I want you to do whatever looks the very best for your design. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I want to just do two lights up here. I don't know. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, first thing is I'm going to change the blending mode of it. And I'm going to change it to overlay here. And that just kind of softens it and allows me to see underneath the tile, my subway tile underneath. And then I'm going to further tweak it and bring it down. That actually is just about right, I think. So I've just brought the opacity down a little bit just so I can see it. And yeah, that looks great. Thank you. Was that Rebecca? That was something I completely forgot about. So so now this light is shining on my appliances here. So do I want that? Do I not? I'm not sure. So maybe what I can do is, if I don't, I can drag it so it's underneath the espresso machine. So now I'm seeing the light washing the wall, but it's not necessarily highlighting the espresso machine. And here again, it's on my Oh, no, this is, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it is shining on that, but I'm gonna leave that one because I put that layer all the way down here so that it was underneath my my kitchen cabinet or my countertop. So boom, we are good. The next step is to assemble all of our materials, the wood flooring, our wood grain on our cabinets, our stainless, whatever other materials, paint color, and put them on a finished board. You know what else? I don't, now that I'm looking at this, I really don't like this wall color layer. It's just, I'm just not digging it. So the beauty about using this black and white cookie is I can come through, I go down to my walls, click on that swatch, and I can, right, even that is better. I want to gray it up a little bit. Maybe too gray. Well, anything's better than what it was before. So there we go. So you'll save this, and then next week we will drop this into a finish board, add materials, add text, and you will be good to go. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question, but that may be after class.
Okay, that's fine. Can I stop sharing?
Paul, why don't we do the island?
You want to do the island in front of here?
I'm just curious why we don't. Is it like
Because the
like
island
RV event?
because the island is going to cover this stuff up.
Yeah.
It's going to cover up your fridge and it's going to cover up your cooktop. So that's why we're not showing the island.
That's the only part, this elevation of this kitchen we're gonna show on a board on the presentation.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me.
Oh, so we're not
Let me-
doing
I
any
can
of
do
the
a
other
floor
walls.
plan.
Let me qualify that. If you want to do the other elevations,
The
well,
window,
I welcome
nice,
that.
nice background.
What was that?
The elevation with the window when the sink is
Yeah.
with the window.
You want to do that one too?
I don't know.
If you want to do all three elevations or two of them, I welcome that. I applaud you for doing it.
Okay.
Because you know what? It would actually look good on a portfolio if you did. But the only one that I'm demoing here and the only one that I'm requiring you to do, by the way, her shadow's too dark. I'm going to have to change that. The only one that am asking you to do as your assignment is this elevation here. But yes, feel free, please.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, I'm going to stop sharing for now.
Wait, Paul,
Yeah,
shoot.
I can go back.
Okay, I was just hoping you keep recording. The side cabinet where it's the cutoff by the sink,
Yeah,
you have it a little bit lighter in your floor trim
right here.
is a little darker and it brings everything out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you do that as its own little layer?
I
that
sure
part?
did. Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did all of this on one layer, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't want this treated the same way. I wanted it
Yeah.
Right.
a little lighter. So I put that on its own layer. Good observation, Jennifer. Yeah.
And then the that trim underneath the cabinets too, is that on its own to
This
get
down-
it darker
this down here,
like that? Mm-hmm.
the toe kick, yeah, that's
Yeah.
on its own layer.
Okay.
Mhm. So you kind of need to be thinking about how you want to treat each of these surfaces. And if you want to treat them differently, then yes, they should go on their own layer. Mhm.
And quickly, how did you draw that line, like to continue the line where the crown is? You know, your
Up here?
cutoffs? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you
How
go,
did you draw that line?
yeah, well, the way to really draw it is in AutoCAD, but I'm gonna go over to my line work. So if I can find it.
And if you draw line work on this, not on CAD, and you're trying to shadow it, is it not gonna make it its own little piece, or will it? Because you're just drawing
No,
it
will.
on Photoshop?
No, I think it will. I think it will. So let me, I'm just going to make a copy of this elevation layer here. And I'm just going to bring it to the top of my layer stack. And the reason is that I already have color here. So if I add a line work down there, it's going to be covered up. So I'm just going to pull this all the way to my very top here. All right. So on my line work layer, I want to draw a line. So what color is the line? Black, right? So I want to set my foreground color to black. And then I'm just going to, let me zoom in a little bit. I'll go to my pencil tool. So I have the brush tool active here, but the pencil tool is tucked underneath the brush tool. So if I left click and hold, I can go down to the pencil tool. And I already have this, I have this do not enter sign here. And if I just click on it, it's going to ask to rasterize, which is perfectly fine. So I'm going to rasterize that. And then I'm back on my pencil tool and I need to set the type of pencil. So I want a hard pencil. I don't want a soft, fuzzy edge. So I'm dragging this all the way to 100%. And right now mine is set to 2 pixels. That may or may not be good. So let's start with that. So I'm going to go over here. I want to get up close. And I'm going to draw a line here. So let's look at my line. So that's, if I just sort of start here and draw, and I'm gonna hold I'm left clicking and holding, and now after I click, then I hold my shift key and I can draw a straight line. And actually that is just the right thickness line I want. So I'm going to pull this back, and again, I'm going to left click and hold, then hold the shift key down, and I can draw a nice straight line right across. So again, left click and hold the shift key, and you can get a nice, perfect straight line. And vertical lines too will work the same way.
So the crown molding line is supposed to be shown on this elevation, on this Photoshop?
Well, do you think it looks better?
Yeah,
Then yes.
okay.
Again, what I want you to do is think about how you're presenting this to a client, and you want to show it off, right?
The same on the other side?
I sure would. Yes, I would put it over here too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the lady and the dog are looking funny. Is that because you dragged the layer up?
Yeah, I did.
Copy?
Yes, I did. So I'm going to turn that layer off. Yeah, they got lines coming through them.
But
So
then, so when we're drawing the line, how do we make a new layer?
no, draw it on your line work layer.
Okay, because you just
Do-
made a
do-
copy to show us.
Yeah, well,
To do it.
well, the reason I did that was because this is already all rendered.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so if I drew that, I already have color on here. So if I
Okay.
drew that line, it would have been covered up. You wouldn't have seen it because of this
Uh-huh.
color is already there. So try to get all of your line work in as early as possible. And it's not always possible. I know that. And if you have to create a new layer that says, call it supplemental line work, then, I cringe, but that's fine. Just don't draw the line work on your, on your stainless steel layer or something like that. Put it on its own new line work layer.
Okay.
Be diligent.
Otherwise, we can't have color on it. So we need, like, if I already colored it, but I can go ahead and delete my
Sure.
color
Or you can
and then
erase that
add my
color.
line.
Yeah,
And then do the color again.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You got it.